Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is the 13th of September. It is Friday for the suspicious amongst us. It is Friday the 13th. And today's topic is unsustainable. Mnuchin doubles down. U.S. Treasury seriously considering 50 and 100-year bonds. Yesterday we talked about how Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, that's how I say his name, was on CNBC talking about the potential for the U.S. to issue 50-year bonds. Now, no other countries, major countries, Western countries, have bonds longer than that, other than, I believe, the Bank of England has a 60-year bond, and 50-year bond, and Austria has a 70-year bond. Now the United States is talking about a 50 and a 100-year bond. Mnuchin was talking about if there's demand for the 50-year bond, there's some things we got to work through, but the Treasury needs to be innovative. We need to provide some type of risk adjustment across all maturities of U.S. Treasuries. It sounds like you call it de-risking the portfolio. You know, there's 22 million of that debt outstanding. And then he said in an interview today, well, we'll start with the New York Times. We'll start with 50 years. And if the answer is 50 years is successful, we'll consider 100-year bonds. Now, we all talk about things being unsustainable. This is I guess if you've been following financial media, whether it's alternative financial media, no matter what, the typical cliched response towards the United States debt, or in general any debt, is that it is unsustainable. And I guess that passes as analysis, it gets passed as a warning, it passes as some type of superior insight that you can see something that no one else can. But there's a problem with that analysis. And these 50 and 100-year bonds are going to change that, because one of the things they always say about the debt is bad. We are going to burden our children with this debt for the rest of their lives. No, we're not. Not if you do 100-year bonds. Your children will avoid that debt, paying back the final principal on that debt, as will anyone listening to this right now, unless medical breakthroughs and science people live well beyond 100 years. If you are listening now in 2019 and in 2020, the United States issues a 100-year bond, neither you or probably any of your children will ever have to, quote, pay that bond back. So all of a sudden, the unsustainable becomes, well, kind of sustainable, because if you shift your bonds into longer term, well, now what you're doing is paying interest on the debt. You don't owe the principal for a century. And if you can lower the interest payments by lowering the interest rate, that unsustainable becomes somewhat sustainable. Now, the reason I bring these two together is Nikki Haley trying to act as she's a genius. She sees breaking the U.S. budget deficit has passed $1 trillion. And Nikki Haley, in a very terse tweet, this can't continue. And of course, thousands of likes and thousands of retweets. How smart and intelligent is Nikki Haley? She understands debt when she sees it. She knows it can't continue. And the gold pumpers, the crypto pumpers. Here you got Pompliano here. What is he going to say? It's unsustainable to issue debt and print money forever. Yeah, it's unsustainable. So when I point this out, that this is basically what everyone is saying. Unsustainable, unsustainable. Here's Nikki Haley. I'm saying the most cliche comment politicians have been making for decades, and I would add to that market observers, financial journalists, gold pumpers, crypto pumpers for decades is the debt is unsustainable. This cannot continue. And then I got some snarky response. I said, well, do you think it's sustainable? Well, I got an easy response for that is nothing is sustainable. Been hearing that end of dollar hegemony, dollar collapse since 1971. Yes, but you don't think it can go on forever? No, I don't. I don't think anything can go on forever. The idea that something is sustainable, what do you mean sustainable? Your life isn't sustainable. You're not going to live to 150 years. If these bonds are 100 years, well, as far as you're concerned, they're sustainable. As far as your kids are concerned, they're sustainable as long as you can make the interest payments. So this idea that something is unsustainable is irrelevant. What is sustainable? How long is it unsustainable? Unless you can put a time period. Well, at some point, that's the other thing. At some point. Been hearing that for decades. At some point. Everything is at some point. If you're a good analyst, you can point out when that point is. I can't. But these people who insist that they're giving you some type of inside scoop at some point because the debt is unsustainable. Now, what we're seeing is that they're trying to make the debt be more sustainable. They're kicking the can down the road further. And this is how you do it. You lengthen the maturities. Now, where did they get this idea from? Well, it's not an original idea, but Donald Trump, remember, the other day, he was calling Feds boneheads, and he made 2 points, or perhaps 3 points, on the, he was saying that the U.S. should be bringing interest rates down, and lengthening the term of those bonds. That's classic debt. If you can refinance debt, you can keep rolling it over and kicking the can down the road. So lower interest rates down to zero, borrow as much as you can on a 100-year term. You've basically made the debt sustainable. You don't got to pay the principal back for 100 years, and you don't have to pay interest because you're getting negative interest rates. I don't think people have thought this through, that this is the plan. They're not going to default on the debt. They're going to roll it over into these other non-interest paying bonds. Now the issue of having to pay the debt back goes away, and you don't have to pay the principal back for 100 years. Problem solved. Now, that's a good thing, as Bernie would say. But this is what's happening. I don't think people are paying attention to it. They're just insisting unsustainable, not realizing the financial trickery that is up these people's sleeve. Nothing is sustainable, but there are ways. If you're in control of the debt issuance, you can do it. Because who among us who listened to all these stories when QE started, this is unsustainable, dollar collapse, and what happened? The debt just kept piling up. It keeps piling up, and now the debt is globally even increased by far more than what they thought was unsustainable in 2010 and 2011. China now has unsustainable debt. Now, what will happen are a lot of countries will have unsustainable debt, and we have this from time to time. Countries like Argentina, it just collapses. But the idea that we all know that this is unsustainable and it's going to end, I can make a good argument if they pull off this 50 and 100-year bond stuff and they start refinancing it into longer terms and there's the market demand for it, it could happen. So let's see what you guys think. But this is what they're saying now. This is what Mnuchin is out with. 50-year bonds, 100-year bonds. They're now talking possibly the U.S. goes down to zero interest rates. Negative interest rates clearly alleviate the debt problem. You get paid to issue bonds. What a concept. And then you don't have to pay the principal back for 50 years, 100 years. Who knows? Or, once it becomes clear that you can't pay it back, what do? You light a match. And that's when you let the whole thing blow up. But I don't think they're ready to do that yet, despite all of these stories that you better have your gold and silver and your cryptocurrencies ready because the debt is unsustainable. Well, you'll see, and I'm hearing that all the time. I've been hearing, in the dollar hegemony, the dollar's going to collapse. Ron Paul back in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. Yeah, everything's going to collapse. Everything lives, everything dies. But one thing that you can't do is you can't say, yeah, I'll just go for the 100-year life plan. I'm going to live to 100 because I can just decide that. Well, you can't do that. But the U.S. Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, what is he, 55 years old? He can sign the United States on for bonds going into the year 2120, 2130, whatever he feels like doing, and people today will buy them. What are they going to do? Hold on to them? Who knows? All right, what do we got in the comments here in the live chat? Albert's unsustainable maybe in 20 years. Yeah, we heard that 20 years ago, Albert. We're always hearing unsustainable, unsustainable. There's so much financial trickery out there. What's unsustainable is you go out and you take out credit card debt, run up $50,000 worth of debt and say, oh, I'll just extend it and I'll do a payment plan for 100 years. So lend me another $50,000. Let me run up another $50,000 and don't charge me any interest. In fact, why don't you pay me to take out $50,000 more on my credit card and I won't pay it back, or my kids aren't going to pay it back. Someone in my family line 100 years from now will pay it back. Well, that can't happen. So if you're running up debt, yeah, it's unsustainable. But when the government does it, I don't know. And again, it all does come to an end, but anyone who claims to know and writes a book, Dollar Collapse or End of Dollar Hegemony, Global Currency Reset by 2015, Schmidt in 2006, whatever it is, they don't know. And they really haven't thought through the implications of how much chicanery or financial wizardry, however you want to characterize it, they can pull off. Yep, Comic Commando says the only game in town, step right up and buy more of our debt. Yep. Well, Albert's got some calculations. He's saying, yes, 20 years. Look at the interest payments as a percentage of tax revenue and extrapolating, I say 20 years. What I like about that comment, Albert, is most people say debt to GDP. Debt to GDP is nonsense. You don't pay your loan with GDP. You pay your debt with tax revenues. Or you pay your debt by your central bank printing up the money, Albert, and retiring or buying new debt. So even there, it doesn't have to be 20 years. If the Fed can print up the money, and here's what can happen. Let's say the debt is unsustainable. Even the interest payments, they don't manage to roll over enough of it into zero yielding coupons or where you have to pay to take the bond. Well, then the Fed will just pay it. They'll just print up the money. But that's inflationary. Yeah, okay, it's inflationary. I mean, when you have no growth, the best thing about doing that, they like that. They want inflation. Inflation, that's a good thing. They want inflation because they know they've created a situation. They brought so much demand forward. They borrowed so much money that we're actually in deflationary times, or we should be, but they're trying to create inflation. So if you can't pay it back, they print the money up and they pay it back. Yep, Comic Commando, 100-year bonds at 0.0000001%. Step right up and buy them by the box. Well, they will if it actually pays interest compared to other bonds. K7 Gixer 1000, another good comment. The debt was never meant to be paid off. That's right. It's only unsustainable if you do it. If you take out the loan. If you borrow on the credit card $110,000. That's unsustainable. That's meant to be paid off. Now, you may never pay it off. You may have to go bankrupt. You may have to work out an arrangement where you're not going to pay it. But it isn't sustainable in that you will have an ongoing loan relationship with that credit card company. Comic Commando. Lewis, sustainable is the millennial catchphrase. That's why they use it. Well, that's true. That fits in with global warming and sustainable energy and everything is sustainable. That's true. That's very true. And K7 Gix are another good point. It's only inflation if the cash circulates. That's right. We didn't have hyperinflation due to QE. We had no growth, but it didn't cause hyperinflation. All they did was pay off the existing bonds that JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs had, or the mortgage-backed securities that became next to worthless, and they just paid them their money back. It's all right. They just recapitalized them. Would have been deflationary if they didn't do that, but it didn't add to the money supply. It didn't add anything. All they did was replace what was lost. Joshua, global control print. The only question now is the version of history of the valuation holomatrix. That's right. It's not supposed to be paid off, says Joshua. The permanent global fiat equity hologram is the end game itself. There you go. That's their version of it becomes sustainable. 100-year bonds are sustainable as far as everyone listening to this broadcast is concerned. A 100-year bond is totally sustainable, especially at 0% interest rate. What do you have to sustain during that 100 years? Nothing. You don't pay any interest on it. You got to worry about how it's going to be paid back in the principal in 100 years. The current holder is not going to care. The current holder is not going to ever get that principal. It's going to trade it. It's going to go back and forth. Money will be made trading 100-year Treasury bonds that no one's ever going to get paid on in their lifetime, and no interest will ever be paid on them. And yet that money, those bonds will go back and forth and will trade at different rates. So what? That's sustainable, at least as far as everyone listening is concerned. Right, and this dovetails into the sustainability paradigm, which is a cover for economic control and eugenics, etc. Says Joshua. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for the comments. Very good comments today and tonight. I want to talk about J.P. Morgan. This whole, now they've done it. They're going to jail. This proves manipulation. I've done a lot of work on manipulation. Yes, indeed, there is manipulation. I'm not a manipulation denier. I know what's going on in the markets, but that doesn't mean we're going to have any type of conclusion where there's going to be a day where they say, that's it. We know that the powers that be are manipulating the gold and silver prices, and that day will end, and then the price will be... None of that's going to happen. I'll explain why tonight, and we will see it tonight. Thank you very much, and don't forget, if you haven't joined up to become a Smaulgld patron, that's the place to be. We're up to $97 a month. We've got 4 subscribe star. We're looking to build that up because we're also not necessarily looking to stay on this YouTube. A lot of trouble with YouTube the last few days, getting cut off. So if you want to stay in the cool mug stacking group, make sure you're in one of the patron clubs. We got proletariat clubs. Go check it out. There's a whole bunch of Bernie Sanders references. If you really want to be in the 1% club, you could donate $1,000 a month. That would make me very happy. I don't expect anyone to do that, but you never know who's out there. So thank you very much. And if you're buying gold or silver, check out the Smaulgld links there. Smaulgld gets a commission on those links when you buy. You pay no more, no less. And by the way, no one, which I didn't expect, bought any Silver Eagles. We did a whole program on them. And it appears that I think that the majority of the listeners think that Silver Eagles are not a good buy compared to other silver coins. I kind of agree with that, with the $2 premium per coin, no matter the price of silver. But that didn't stop people from buying them in 2015 when the price was low. But maybe people have wisened up. Now we're going to see how this works out. Tomorrow night on Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld, we're going to do the history of junk silver, and we'll see how much junk silver we sell during that or after that program. The purpose of the program isn't to sell the junk silver, it's to discuss it, but there will be an option to buy, and I'm going to guess that some people will think, from what I know, what I'm hearing, junk silver might be something to buy. Those Silver Eagles, a little too pricey, even at the low price of silver right now. All right, thank you very much. Any more comments here? Josh was looking at the patron tier names. Yes. They're worth the price of admission. Well, step right up, Joshua, and join one of the mug clubs or the 1% club. I know you're dying. It would be nice to have you as a patron, Joshua. Very good. Yes, the bond bubble is bursting now, says Albert. All right, everyone. Sign up for the Smaulgld Super Smug Mug clubs on Subscribestar or the 1% clubs over on patreon.com or one-time donations. Also, let me throw up the thing there. We got the fundraising page. We might as well get the fundraising going on here. There it is. There's all your options. It's also below this BitChute, this YouTube. It's on the Smaulgld website. But there's your way of helping Smaulgld out. Stay active. Because remember, everyone needs a financial incentive. This is not really a financial incentive. The only thing it does for me is it keeps me up to date for my own benefit. But it doesn't benefit me financially to do this show. So if you enjoy the show, consider keeping it online. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. I'll just leave that up there a few seconds. If you got your phone, you can QR code the Bitcoin or the Litecoin. You can order yourself a Smaulgld mug. I even have a P.O. snail mail box address there. You can send your appreciation that way as well. We'll see you tonight. J.P. Morgan, silver manipulation.